Greetings, it's Adam with Arcade Galactic. Almost said Heroes there, which is another channel that I do. But I know for this Arcade Galactic channel, I've neglected it a bit, and so my apologies about that, but making up for it with where I can, especially with this video, where today I'm going to talk about a new acquisition that we recently got our hands on and what makes this special and interesting, and that is Hydra by Atari Games. Now, this game isn't terribly well known, and that's for two reasons. It was released in 1990 to arcades first, and out of the production, it didn't do super well for what you would normally see with an arcade machine. Only about 1,050 units were produced. And out of those, a vast majority were what they call a conversion kit. So the one behind me is what they call an upright dedicated model, which would be this machine is built at the factory and then shipped out to an arcade operator who's purchased it, and they just put it in their arcade, plug it in, and they can start making money off of it. But conversion kits, you don't get the whole cabinet, you get the computer, you get the controls, you get the artwork, but then you have to do the work of converting some other cabinet over to that game. And so most of the Hydras out there were conversion kits, and so in part due to only having 1,000 around the entire planet, just wasn't a game that a lot of people came across, and also due to that there weren't a lot of ports. The only home port for something like a console was for the Atari Lynx, which is actually how I first discovered this game back in the 90s, and it was a really well done port. When I played that and played this, comparing them to each other, they nailed it pretty close. But the other ports were done for computers, or I guess what you could call alternate computers, like the Atari ST, the Commodore Amiga, but not like the IBM PC, which is what most people had. And so those two factors there, and I'm also not aware of it really showing up on other compilations of games since, or been put on something like Xbox Live Arcade. It's just kind of gone under the radar and forgotten by time. Now, what makes this one in particular special? Well, the game was designed by Dennis Harper. Now, he designed Tubin in 1988, and we actually got our hands on a Tubin cabinet as well. There's a video on my Arcade Heroes channel where I unbox these and install them. Unfortunately, as I record this in the middle of July, we only had Tubin for, it was under 24 hours, and the monitor died, and it's been very frustrating. I'm working to try and get it fixed, but so far haven't had any luck with one part that came in, and so still working on that. So that's why I'm focusing on Hydra, because that one has been working. But after Dennis designed Tubin, his next project was Hydra. And it's a lot like Road Blasters. If you're familiar with Atari Games as Road Blasters, a lot of people know that as well from Wreck-It Ralph, since there was an appearance of Road Blasters and Going Turbo and all that in Wreck-It Ralph. But Hydra's a lot like Road Blasters and reuses some of the same concepts, particularly with fuel. And this, they're gems instead of little spheres. You still have to manage your fuel and all that, but in this game you can actually boost into the air by pushing the boost button on the cabinet, and you fly up in the air where you can grab bags of money and shoot other enemies that are in the air as well. You can kind of see that in the action going behind me. You're kind of a mercenary taking some valuable object like the crown jewels down a river, and you have to get them to their location. And there's a rival that if you run into a piece of wood floating in the river or get shot down, your rival can pick up the prize and get ahead of you, and you have to catch up and get that, because if you reach the end goal without your bounty, then you won't get all that cash. And having that cash is great, because when you get to the end of the level, you can then use what money you've collected during the level to purchase things like fuel or new weapons and all that, and so that's pretty cool. And the controls on this are also one thing that make this unique, where it has a yoke controller very similar to the Atari Star Wars controller and a few other games that used a yoke. It also has a foot pedal. But what makes this particular one that we have standing here really special is that I came in contact with Dennis Harper in May or so, and as we were talking about something else, where I was asking him about the E.T. arcade game that was never finished and produced, he brought up that, hey, I have a Hydra and a Tubin, would you like to purchase them from me? And after going back and forth in email for a while, eventually I did, and so I purchased these from the programmer himself, as he received these machines after he developed them, and they've been in his possession since. They have not been in an arcade. And so this particular unit here is a prototype. And so I guess this would make 201 dedicated uprights that are out there, unless there are any other existing prototype cabinets. But I'll throw up the flyer for Hydra here, and so what you can see as far as the difference goes, the molded shell, it's the same design, but our version has it in kind of a silver gray instead of the bright white. Ours also lacks the artwork that the production units came with, so I had to print out my own marquee, and doesn't have the instructions on the front, but it also was signed by Mr. Harper, so I really appreciate that. But if you want to play a prototype Atari game, we've got one finally. So I know we're way behind a place like the Galloping Ghost arcade, which has several Atari prototypes, but still, it's something cool, and the game is fully playable. As far as I'm aware, the actual software, it's not prototype software, it's the same release candidate, but haven't really looked into that too much, but everything plays just fine like it should. And so, yeah, if you want to play some arcade history, it's a lot of fun. Even though the game didn't do well enough on the market to become really well known, it's still really cool. And like I said, it's like Road Blasters. If you like Road Blasters, you'll like this one. And it's also cool just having that yoke controller, which just makes it different, especially different from, say, using a game controller or like playing it on the Atari Lynx, which was a D-pad and buttons instead of the whole yoke controller foot pedal thing. And the graphics for the time were pretty cool, almost a little bit like an enhanced Outrun, and somewhat touching on the digitized stuff. There's not a whole lot there that I'm sure is digitized. I think most of it was hand-drawn, but there seems to be a few of the graphics that are like that. And also surprised by how small this cabinet is. Like, we have our afterburner right here, and you can see it's a bit taller. Afterburner's kind of a typical size arcade machine, but Hydra, for whatever reason, they made it a little smaller, but that's nice for transport. But anyways, let me know what you think about this, and if you are at our West Valley location, then come and check it out, throw some coins in it. And again, hopefully we'll soon have Tubin back up and running, and when we do, I'll do a video about that and show that off, and so hopefully sooner rather than later. Yes, we've unfortunately had a number of machines suddenly break down recently, and just different parts on them breaking down are maximum tune 5. So I am doing everything I can to get these fixed and whatnot, but sometimes the parts that I order don't fix it, or sometimes the places I send it to are extremely slow, and so it's been a little bit frustrating on that, but we are working on it. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.